Quinta Monroy was located in Iquique, Chile. This city started off as a Peruvian city with a large Chilean population. During the War of the Pacific, Chile was able to conquer the city. In 1960, the density of the area was low enough to allow for market gardens between homes. However, the population grew along with the number of properties as residents were able to get their hands on construction materials from local ports. This process led to narrow walkways, cramped rooms, and lack of natural light and ventilation. This created an unpleasant, unhealthy, and overcrowded living environment.
In 1973, a military coup overthrew the government and began a military dictatorship which lasted through 1990. This impact on Iquique, the Chilean desert town, resulted in slow development due to the political unrest and dictatorship that lasted through the late 20th century. In 2000, President Ricardo Lagos took over and played a large role in transforming Chilean democracy. The former Minister of Public Works also continued to undertake and complete major development projects as president. Lagos proved to be an expert renovator, a pragmatic reformer who believed that the way to build a better world is to renovate the existing structures. Politics are not often associated with craftwork. However, policymakers' approach to a problem allowed for such an intervention. Chile will spend $10 billion in the next 20 years to overcome the housing deficit, but also at the small family scale, the housing subsidy received from the state will be by far the biggest aid ever. This is important because the site was illegally occupied with self-built housing. This created unpleasant living conditions that were unhealthy and unsafe to the residents.
After the reform policies were adapted, Elemental was introduced to the project. They worked on social housing projects where the architecture has social impact. Informed by tradition, yet inspired to surpass it, Elemental employs the latest technologies, materials, and strategies to advance a socially and environmentally integrated architecture.
Housing aid and ability to see the communities as an investment were instrumental in facilitating this project. Not only was Lagos able to become the first socialist president after overthrowing the country's dictatorship, but he was well informed on productive government intervention. He was an advocate for social reform through investment in infrastructures for the lowest socio-economic class. By doing so, he mobilized a workforce and over time drastically improved the country's economy.
Alejandro Aravena is a Chilean architect who believes in improving the lives of the people by using architecture as a way to create solutions to the challenges faced by society. He takes on this minimalist approach, taking everything out that is not strictly necessary.
Foreign relations with the United States bolstered aid for housing investment. Lagos and the local municipalities directed the funds to infrastructure and renovation projects in the favela communities, such as Iquique, projects that took the residents into consideration in an effort to minimize displacement. Strategic political investments in the working class spurred projects that relied on the craft skill that already existed within the community.
In the context of this project, the goal was to minimize displacement by settling 100 families in the same place. This location has value because it is close to the center city and allows for families to stay connected to their social and economic networks. Before settling on the half-a-house typology, two other typologies were thought of for social housing. These were row homes in a high-rise building. The problem with the row home typology is that it compromises privacy and impacts circulation, resulting in overcrowding. A high-rise building also did not work for the space because it wouldn't allow for expansion. Since there wasn't enough money to build everyone a good house, Elemental's solution was to build everyone half of a good house. Elemental balances low rise, high density without overcrowding and with possibility of expansion. Elemental settled on this half a house incremental solution, which allowed for 4 courtyards, which were surrounded by 13 blocks with 93 homes. Elemental provided families the basic concrete frame with a bathroom, kitchen, and roof. This allowed them to put their own identity on the home and expand when they had the means to. By providing the foundational elements of a good home that had middle income standards, this in turn increased property values for the residents.
After the project came to fruition in 2003, residents took up the housing project and immediately worked on infilling the rest of the homes they were provided through the structure and framework of the architectural intervention. This can be seen as a success, as quoted from one of the residents. It makes me feel proud that I own a house that I built myself. It costs a lot of effort, but we live comfortably. Since the completion and inception of the project, Alejandro Aravena and his firm continued their work in social housing, developing projects in different areas, but with similar typologies that eventually won their firm a Pritzker Prize Award in architecture for their work in social housing. The goal for this individual project was to turn social housing into an investment rather than an expense. The craft that it took to develop Quinta Monroy was not only informed by the location, but by the political climate of Iquique, Chile, and by the architect Alejandro Aravena and his firm Elemental. The place, politics, and architect all influence this social housing project and inform one another.
Since there was a lack of regulation on the housing additions, this allowed people to build within intended public spaces despite Elemental's intentions being to turn the informal settlement into a new and improved community. As the influences of the architect and policymakers started to disappear, this allowed for the return of illegal settlements construing the original intent. However, in reflection, the craft that made Quinta Monroy successful was reliant on the collaboration of 3 elements: place, architect, and politics.